Now, even after all of that, all of what I just talked about, all of what I've said in the last 2 videos, after all of this, which again is only a fraction of the reasons to actually question all of this story, if that has not opened your, if all of what I've talked about has not opened your eyes to the reality here, this next part should really do the trick. And I'm hoping it does for most people. This coming from Global Research, entitled Convenient Tanker Attacks as U.S. Seeks War with Iran. Now, there's actually a lot of good information in this article. More than just the path to Persia. But they broke out a couple of different paragraphs, and I recommend you actually go in for yourself and read the document, Path to Persia. It's amazing how much information you can get for something like this to see what they were doing not that long ago. Now, this is the document right here. This is what, and again, all this is in the show notes for you to see. And this is in there. It's a 2009 paper, not very long ago, called Which Path to Persia? Options for a New American Strategy Toward Iran. Now, the corporate, financier-funded Brookings Institution would first admit the complications, of course, of a U.S.-led military aggression against Iran. They say, quote, any military operation against Iran will likely be very unpopular around the world and require the proper international context, both to ensure the logistical support the operation would require and to minimize the blowback from it. Starting off very mild. Trust me, it gets worse. Now, the paper then lays out how the U.S. could appear to the world as a peacemaker and depict Iran's betrayal of a, quote, very good deal as a pretext for an otherwise reluctant U.S. military response. You seeing where this is going? It gets good. This is 2009, remember. Well before all this, pulling out the U.S. pulling out of the JCPOA. And this is in 2009. They're documenting the idea of depicting Iran as betrayal from a very good deal, right? Faking it, basically. Now, it says the best way to minimize international opprobrium or harsh criticism and maximize support, basically the way to avoid criticism and maximize support, however grudging or covert, is to strike only when there is a widespread conviction that the Iranians were given but then rejected a superb offer. So basically saying and this is what's interesting, wait to strike, it says, not react to Iran's actions, but wait to strike when you feel that you've got the popular support. So does that not imply basically attacking a country? Not responding to attacks, but choosing to attack, choosing to propagandize people against it, and then moving when you've got the support. That's what it says. And of course, the rejecting a superb deal, that's the nuclear deal we're talking about here, that they are either very psychic or planned exactly what we're talking about. And I think you know which it is. As we've seen, everybody but the U.S. and Israel recognize that Iran has never violated the deal. And this is what they want you to think. They want you to think Iran rejected, guess, the superb deal, like it says right there in the documentation. Now, it says one so good, the deal, that only a regime determined to acquire nuclear weapons and acquire them for the wrong reasons would turn it down. I'm not kidding. This is what it says in this document. And I will show you some clips of it at the end. I'm going to keep flashing through the document, so you have to feel like you have to read it with me. But it literally says, determined to acquire this, they want to pretend the deal was so good that only a regime determined to acquire nuclear weapons. I mean, this is literally the talking points of today, written in 2009. Does that shock you? I mean, this is what they've done before. Now, it says, under those circumstances, the United States or Israel, it says, right in this document, could portray its operations as taken in sorrow, not anger, and at least some in the international community would conclude that the Iranians brought it on themselves by refusing a very good deal. I mean, this stuff is unbelievable. And this is, do you really think that if the mainstream media was actually doing their job, they were actually journalists seeking the truth, that they wouldn't talk about this, that they wouldn't know about this? This is public knowledge. This has been circulated in the independent media for a very long time because it shows they're lying to you. It shows their planned covert operations to fabricate and manufacture war. That's what we're looking at. And I understand they say sorrow, not anger, right? So we have to pretend like, oh, we're reluctantly doing this. We don't want war. How many times have we heard that? We don't want the war. But we have to do this because they brought it on themselves. Have we not seen everything this is lining out so far? And from 2009 onward, since this was written, it is precisely what the U.S. has done and set out to achieve. Now, first with President Obama's signing of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, up to and including President Trump's attempts to backtrack from it based on fabricated claims Iran failed to honor the agreement. This was the plan, mind you. Now, in 2009, the policy paper also discussed goading Iran into war. Here's where it gets even better. Claiming, quote, with provocation, the international diplomatic and domestic political requirements of an invasion of Iran would be mitigated. I mean, right there, we're talking about an invasion of Iran. So let's not pretend this is anything else. And it says, and the more outrageous the Iranian provocation, and the less that the United States is seen to be goading Iran, right? Actively talking about we have to make sure we don't make it too obvious that we're goading them into war. It says the more these challenges would be diminished. Basically saying that they have to make sure that they don't appear to be goading them or it will ruin the plan. And it says in the absence of a sufficiently horrific provocation, meeting these requirements would be daunting. Basically saying we have to make sure that the provocation is really horrible. Otherwise, it just won't sell it. I mean, this is exactly what we're always trying to tell people they do, what they have done, that they're doing now. And here it is written in ink right in front of you. Now, an obvious method here for achieving Washington's goal of provoking war with Iran would be the U.S. simply staging an Iran provocation itself, don't you think? I just saw that in the chat. I had to look at it. Yes, this is, I'm assuming you tuned in late. This is from The Path to Persia, a U.S. government document. And it's crazy to me that this is so people go, oh my God, how that can't be true. Not that that's what you were saying in the chat, but it's that shocking to people. We've been saying this for years, people. And this document has been there for years. They just won't show you this. But again, the obvious method would be simply them creating that provocation, wouldn't you say? Something very common throughout U.S. history. And as this document literally outlines right in front of you. Exactly that. It's not mincing words here. Now, as the U.S. has done in Vietnam, following the Gulf of Tonkin, or U.S. fabrications regarding weapons of mass destruction, Washington claimed Iraq held in its possession. We've all seen these. The U.S. has a very clear track record of not just simply provoking provocations, but staging them from whole cloth. Now, the Brookings paper even admits to the unlikelihood of Iran falling into Washington's trap, lamenting, quote, it is certainly the case that if Washington sought such a provocation, it could take actions that might make it more likely that Tehran would do so, although being too obvious about this could nullify the provocation. Again, don't be too obvious that you're lying to people, otherwise you could screw it all up. It says, however, since it would be up to Iran to make the provocative move, which Iran has been wary of doing most times in the past, and again, right there showing you that Iran is not the provocative, aggressive one they make them out to be. Historically, that's the exact opposite, and this is them basically saying, well, we kind of have to push them forward because Iran in the past has not chosen to take the bait. Interesting. And it says the United States would never know for sure when it would get the requisite Iranian provocation. In fact, it might never come at all. And the point being that so we have to do something to make this all happen, which is the whole point of this document. The alleged sabotaging of oil tankers off the shore of the UAE in May, and now the additional attacks this month, could very likely be the beginnings of a new series, and it's a new series because it's happened before, of staged provocations aimed at leveraging the recent listing of the Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization, together with increased economic pressure as a result of U.S. sanctions, reinitiated after the U.S. unilaterally pulled out of the nuclear deal and lied about it the entire time. And the last part here, and this, I'll show you the image, just so, because this is important. And somebody actually told me the other day that if I show pages like this, it confuses people because they feel like they have to read. And so trying not to do that. But the point is that this is the document. Please go in and read it after the show for yourself. Here is what I'm reading right there for you to see. And you can see that it's the Path to Persia right there on the bottom of the page. It says, it would be far more preferable if the United States could cite an Iranian provocation And understand it says more preferable, right? So they would prefer that Iran attack so they could use that to invade. But they're willing to fake it instead, basically. So it says more preferable if they could cite an Iranian provocation as justification for the airstrikes before launching them, right? Otherwise, we'll just launch them anyway. But it'd be preferable if we could have something to justify it for the people, right? Because we need to pretend like we care about things. And it says clearly, the more outrageous, the more deadly, and the more unprovoked the Iranian action, the better off the United States would be. I mean, how does that, they're saying the worse and more deadly their attack, that's better for the United States. But see, the way they use the United States means them, the government, the ruling class. Do you really think an aggressive, violent attack by Iran would be better for Americans? Probably not. Seeing as how they're talking about a war with the United States. But they're literally saying, yeah, let's hope they kill a bunch of Americans because that would be best for our agenda. And it says, of course, it would be very difficult for the United States to goad Iran into such a provocation, right? They're suggesting that that's part of their goal, without the rest of the world recognizing this game, which would then undermine it. So right there saying, no, we're not going to do this because that's immoral, because it's fraudulent, because that's illegal, because that's not what America's all about. No, it's because we'll get caught. Because doing so would show them that we're lying. So we got to do it secretly and better and more behind the scenes. I mean, this should really wake people up. And then again, contrast this right now in your mind with what the guys at the Washington Institute said right in front of you. That the goal is war with Iran, that we need to figure out a way to get I don't see how the president's going to achieve his goal of war with Iran. And at the time, he wasn't talking about Trump. It's an older video. But the point being, that you see, we needed this and we needed this to set these wars up in the past. This is what we need now. And he goes, well, submarines they just disappear sometimes. And now factor in with this. Factor in with the nuclear deal. Factor in with everything that we've seen happen. It's as if this document was this Nostradamus? I mean, clearly, this was a plan. And they're following that plan. And they will do everything in their power to make sure that you do not recognize this is what's happening. It's very chilling, but it's the reality. And it may not be fun to wake up to what these people are doing. It may be very uncomfortable to recognize these people that you thought were fighting for you are actually doing the exact opposite. But it's the reality. And the only way we can actually change that is if you wake up and do something about it. Speak your mind.